All right, everyone get ready because we are diving deep into something I think we can all relate to.
Oh, yeah.
Common English mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've got this super interesting source.
Okay.
It's basically a conversation between a boy and a girl.
Okay.
And they're kind of dissecting all these common language pitfalls.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting how these mistakes, they aren't just limited to non-native speakers.
Oh, totally.
Even those of us who, we grew up speaking English.
Yeah.
We can still trip over these little things.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a native English speaker.
Yeah.
And I still catch myself sometimes.
Totally.
Making these errors. It's like our brains go on autopilot.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, boom, you got a grammar gremlin, just like in your sentence.
And one of the big ones that they tackle is the whole your versus your dilemma.
Oh, yeah.
We've all seen it, maybe even done it ourselves.
For sure. For sure.
But why is this such a persistent problem?
I think it really has to do with just the way that we process language.
Okay.
We tend to kind of skim over familiar words and your look so similar.
Yeah.
It's like our brains just kind of skip over that subtle but crucial difference.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
There's actually a psychological phenomenon.
Okay.
It's called the Stroop effect.
Okay.
That might be at play here.
Interesting.
It's basically this idea that our brains have difficulty processing information that's conflicting.
Okay.
So when we see which visually looks just like your room, our brains can get tripped up by those conflicting meanings.
So it's like a battle in our brains.
Exactly.
Between what we're seeing and what we knew it actually means.
Precisely.
No wonder this is such a common mistake.
It's a cognitive trap.
It is a trap.
Yes.
Wow.
So, awareness is the first step, I think, to breaking free of these traps.
Right.
The girl in the dialogue, she has this clever trick of reading, you're allowed as you are.
Oh, yeah.
But let's take that a step further.
Okay.
What if we train ourselves to actually slow down when we see those words?
Okay.
And, visualize their distinct meanings.
Yeah, I like the visualizing your piece as something belonging to someone.
Right.
Like your book. And you're, as a shortened, you are.
Yes.
You're amazing.
Exactly. Like giving those words a personality to solidify their meaning.
Oh, I like that.
All right. So let's move on to those other sneaky shapeshifters.
Okay.
They're
Oh, those tricky triplets.
They sound the same.
Yeah.
They're spelled almost the same.
Right.
But their meanings are totally different.
Recipe for confusion.
Absolutely.
Especially for English language learners.
Instead of just memorizing definitions, though.
Okay.
Let's think about the history of these words.
Oh, okay.
Did you know that there actually comes from the Old English word?
I did not.
Their meaning of them.
Interesting.
It's fascinating how language evolves over time, right?
It is.
And understanding those roots can help us remember their meanings.
That's a brilliant point.
Yeah.
It's like those family tree diagrams. If we can kind of trace the lineage of these words, it gives us a deeper understanding of how they're connected.
Exactly.
But also how they're distinct.
And, there actually has its roots in the word here.
Wow.
Which meant in that place. Even back then, it was all about location, location, location.
I love that.
Yeah.
Suddenly, these words aren't just these random spellings.
Right.
They have a story.
Yeah.
They have a history that connects us to this evolution of the English language.
Exactly.
It's like we're deciphering a code.
That brings us to the rebellious teenager of the group. Retraction if they are. Which probably didn't even come about until much later.
Right.
In the evolution of English.
And this highlights, I think, why it's so important.
Yeah.
To understand the mechanics of contractions, they can be tricky.
They can be.
But once you grasp that concept
of,
combining two words into one,
exactly,
it becomes a lot easier to navigate.
Absolutely. And, this whole discussion of there
yeah,
really shows why just memorizing rules isn't enough.
Right.
It's about making those deeper connections, understanding the nuances, appreciating the history, the evolution of language.
It's like you can learn the steps to a dance.
Yes.
But it's not until you feel the music and understand the story behind the dance.
Beautiful analogy.
That you can really bring it to life.
That's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Is bring language to life.
I like that.
Make it vibrant, make it meaningful, and empower you to use it with confidence.
I'm so ready to talk about pronunciation pitfalls next.
Okay.
But first, I gotta ask, did you ever struggle with certain words?
Oh, absolutely mischievous was my nemesis for years.
Wait, really?
I kept wanting to say mischievous.
That's exactly how I used to say it.
Yeah, great minds think alike, right?
I guess so.
Speaking of pronunciation, though, our dynamic duo also tackles recipe and vegetable.
Oh, yeah.
Two words that often trip people up.
And the girl's suggestion to just immerse yourself in the sounds of the language.
Yes.
Through movies, through music, through podcasts even.
Right.
Is spot on.
It is.
But let's take that a step further.
Okay.
Instead of just passively listening, what if we actively practice mimicking the pronunciation?
That's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
It's like practicing a musical instrument.
Right.
The more you rehearse those difficult notes, the smoother they become.
Yeah, and the same goes for pronunciation.
Exactly.
The more you practice those tricky sounds, the more natural they'll feel.
And even if your accent isn't perfect, confidence is key.
Yes.
Embrace your unique voice.
Love it.
Let your personality shine through.
So ditch the fear of sounding silly.
Yes.
Embrace the joy of playing with language.
All right, are you ready to tackle those pesky run-on sentences?
Oh, definitely.
This is a writing woe that plagues even the most experienced writers.
Yeah, I think we've all been guilty of crafting those monster sentences.
Oh, yeah.
That just keep going and going and going.
Like a runaway train.
With no brakes.
So the key takeaway from the source material here is the importance of reading your sentences aloud.
Oh, yeah.
If you find yourself gasping for air before you reach the end, it's a sure sign that you need to do some trimming.
It's like a breath-holding contest. If you can't make it to the end without turning blue, something's got to change.
And the girl's advice about using punctuation to create pauses.
Oh, yeah.
It's so simple, yet brilliant.
It's like adding those much-needed rest stops on a long road trip.
Exactly. Punctuation is our friend.
Yes, it is.
Not our foe.
It helps guide the reader through our thoughts.
Right.
It provides clarity.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But why do we tend to write these marathon sentences in the first place?
That's a good question.
I think sometimes we get so caught up in our thoughts that we just keep pouring them out onto the page without really considering the reader's experience. It's like we're afraid to let go of an idea, even if it means sacrificing clarity and conciseness.
It's almost like we're holding our breath as we write, afraid to pause and let the reader catch up.
Right.
But, there's a certain beauty in brevity.
Absolutely. Sometimes the most powerful sentences are the shortest ones.
Ernest Hemingway was a master of concise writing.
Oh, for sure.
He believed that every word should earn its place on the page.
So true.
And I think that's a valuable lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
Whether we're writing novels or emails.
Every word should contribute to the overall impact.
Speaking of impact.
Yes.
Let's move on to another writing woe that can make or break a piece of writing.
Okay.
Mixing senses.
Those time-traveling sentences.
Yes.
That jump between past, present, and future.
Leaving the reader utterly disoriented.
It's like a linguistic roller coaster, but not the fun kind.
Not the fun kind.
And the girl gives that great tip.
Yeah.
Of sticking to one tense per paragraph.
Consistency is key.
Yeah.
It's like setting the stage for a play.
Right.
Once you've established the time frame, you don't want to keep jerking the audience back and forth between different eras.
And her suggestion of writing daily logs in a specific tense is a fantastic exercise for solidifying that habit.
It's like training your brain to stay within the boundaries of a chosen time period.
And it connects to a larger point about the importance of practice.
Yes.
Like any skill writing takes practice, practice, practice.
Totally.
The more we write, the more we refine our craft and develop our unique voice.
And it's not just about writing perfectly. It's about exploring different styles.
Yeah.
Experimenting with language, discovering what resonates with us as writers.
Love that perspective.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the journey, not just striving for the destination.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial element of communication speaking.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And, sometimes our spoken words can trip us up.
For sure.
Just as much as our written ones.
I think we've all had those moments where we've blurted out something and then immediately cringed internally.
Yes. Like the classic me and my friend went instead of my friend and I went. Such a common error.
It is.
It highlights the importance of understanding word order, subject-verb agreement.
Right.
But let's think about it from a practical perspective.
Okay, I'm all for practical.
The girl's trick of removing my friend from the sentence to hear the error.
Yeah.
It's genius.
It is pure genius.
It's about isolating the problem to reveal its true ugliness.
It's like holding up a mirror for that mistake.
It's about training our ears to recognize the correct phrasing. Even in casual conversation.
Yeah. And I think this connects to a larger point about being mindful of our language.
Yes.
Both written and spoken.
Absolutely.
Words have power.
They do.
And how we use them can really impact how we're perceived by others and even how we perceive ourselves.
So let's be intentional with our language.
Love that.
Whether we're crafting an email or just having a casual conversation.
It all matters.
It does.
And that brings us to another crucial aspect of communication.
Okay.
Listening is often overlooked.
It is.
But it's arguably one of the most important skills that we can develop.
I agree.
And our source material actually touches on this.
Okay.
Using the boys' struggle with understanding fast speakers as a starting point.
Right.
And the girls' suggestions for improving listening comprehension are spot on.
They are.
Watching movies with subtitles, listening to podcasts at varying speeds. But let's dig a little deeper.
Okay.
What makes active listening so challenging?
Yeah.
And how can we train ourselves to become better listeners?
That's a great question.
One of the reasons I think active listening is so difficult is that we live in this world of constant distractions. Our phones are buzzing, our minds are racing.
Yeah.
It's hard to truly focus on what someone is saying.
Our brains are constantly bombarded with information.
Yeah.
It's challenging to filter out the noise and focus on the signal.
Okay.
But what if we approached listening like a detective gathering clues?
I like that.
What if we trained ourselves to pay attention, not just to the words being spoken, but to the speaker's tone of voice, their body language, the context of the conversation?
Ooh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Turning listening into an engaging puzzle.
Exactly.
Searching for those hidden meanings and nuances.
That's the beauty of active listening. It transforms this passive activity into an engaging and rewarding experience.
And a skill that benefits us in all areas of life.
Yes.
Not just in language learning.
It's a superpower in disguise.
It really is.
Now, before we take a quick break, I want to pose a challenge to you.
Okay.
What are some other ways we can train ourselves to become better listeners?
Ooh.
Think about it.
Okay.
We'll pick up this conversation when we return.
We'll be right back, and remember, those listening skills are worth honing.
They are.
So let's flex those mental muscles and see what we can discover.
I love it.
Welcome back. I have to say, after that last conversation about active listening, I'm really starting to be more aware of how I'm listening to people.
It's amazing what we miss, right?
Yeah, totally.
We're not fully engaged.
But you know what? I was thinking about something the girl mentioned. About watching movies with subtitles.
Right.
It's such a simple thing, but it's so effective for boosting your listening comprehension.
It is, and it really taps into that power of visual learning.
Yeah.
You know, seeing the words written out as you hear them really helps to solidify those connections in our brain.
Totally.
Plus, it exposes us to different accents and speech patterns.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point.
Which is so valuable.
You know, I actually started watching foreign films with subtitles years ago. And it not only helped me learn new languages, but it also made me more attuned to the nuances of English pronunciation.
Interesting.
It's like training your ears to pick up on those subtle differences.
That's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
It's like expanding your sonic palette.
I like that.
Speaking of expanding our language skills,
let's
talk about slang and idioms.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah.
Slang is so dynamic.
It is.
And colorful.
Yes.
But I think we can all agree that there's a time and a place for it.
Exactly. It's about reading the room, so to speak. Dropping a slang term in a formal presentation.
Yeah.
Could be like wearing a swimsuit to a job interview.
Probably not the best look.
Probably not.
You know, it's so interesting how slang can be so region-specific.
It can.
What might be perfectly acceptable slang in one quarter of the world could sound totally foreign in another.
That's so true. It's a reminder that language is constantly evolving, right?
It is.
It's adapting to different cultural contexts.
And it makes you wonder, how does slang even come about?
That's a fascinating question.
Like, who decides what's cool and what's not?
It's like there's this underground language lab where new words and phrases are being created, tested out on the streets.
And I think social media has become a huge catalyst for the spread of slang.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a global marketplace for language trends.
It really is.
But, you know, this whole discussion about slang and formality makes to think about the evolution of language in general.
Oh, I love thinking about the bigger picture.
Well, if you think about it, language is a living organism, right? It's constantly growing and changing.
It is, yeah.
What might have been considered grammatically incorrect 100 years ago might be perfectly acceptable today.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's like language has its own evolutionary tree.
It does.
Branching out.
Adapting to new environments, new influences.
And that brings us to another aspect of language that often stirs debate.
Oh.
Contraptions.
Yes, those little rebels of the grammar world.
They are.
So ingrained in our everyday speech.
Right.
But they often get a bad rap in formal writing.
I know. It's like they're considered too casual, too informal.
Too informal.
For serious academic papers.
Right.
and business reports.
But, I think it's important to challenge those assumptions.
Okay.
Why can't formal writing be engaging and accessible?
Yeah.
Why do we have to sound like robots?
Right.
Just because we're writing about a complex topic?
I think there's a way to strike a balance.
There is.
You can maintain a professional tone.
Yeah.
While still using contractions judiciously.
Right.
To create a more conversational flow.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Between clarity and approachability.
I like that.
And, language rules are meant to be guidelines, not handcuffs.
Guidelines, not handcuffs. I love that.
Yeah.
We should be using language to express ourselves.
Yes.
Not to confine ourselves.
Well said. Speaking of expressing ourselves, let's shift gears and talk about something near and dear to my heart.
Okay.
Regional dialects and accents.
This is a topic that could fill an entire podcast series.
It could.
There's so much to explore.
Yeah.
From the historical roots of different dialects to the unique slang and pronunciation.
It's a linguistic treasure trove.
It is.
And, it's fascinating how dialects can reflect the cultural and geographical influences of a region.
Right.
Like how certain words or phrases in American English can be traced back to Native American languages.
Wow.
Or the influence of early settlers from different parts of Europe.
That's so cool. It's like language is a math of history.
It is.
Charting the movements and interactions of people throughout time.
And it's important to celebrate those variations instead of trying to erase them.
I agree.
Dialects are part of our cultural heritage.
They are.
They add richness and texture to the tapestry of the English language.
I think it's beautiful how different accents can make the same words sound so distinct and expressive.
Right.
It's like each region has its own musicality.
I love that.
Its own rhythm and melody.
And it's interesting how our perceptions of different accents can be so subjective.
Oh, yeah.
What one person might find charming, another might find grating.
It's all about exposure.
It is.
And perspective.
Yeah.
The more we expose ourselves to different accents, the more we appreciate their unique beauty.
And the stories they tell.
And, it's important to remember that everyone has an accent.
We do.
It's just that some accents are considered more standard.
Right.
Or neutral than others.
Often due to social and historical factors.
That's a really important point.
It is.
We often make judgments about people based on their accents.
We do.
Without even realizing it.
Right.
It's like we've internalized these societal biases.
Yeah.
About what sounds correct or educated.
And those biases can have real-world consequences.
They can.
Impact everything from job opportunities to social interactions.
It's a reminder that language isn't just about words.
It's not.
It's about power dynamics.
Yes.
And social perceptions.
Exactly. And it's something we need to be mindful of.
We do.
As we navigate this complex world of communication.
So well said. Now, while we're focusing on common English mistakes, it's important to remember that making mistakes is an essential part of the learning process for everyone.
Absolutely, especially for those learning English as a second language.
Yes.
Mistakes are not failures.
Right.
They're opportunities for growth and discovery.
And it's so important to create a safe and supportive environment.
I agree.
Where people feel comfortable making mistakes and learning from them.
It's about fostering a culture of curiosity and encouragement.
Yes.
Rather than judgment and criticism.
And one thing that can be particularly challenging for non-native English speakers is mastering the use of articles.
Ah, those pesky little words.
Or and
they seem so simple.
Right.
Yet their usage can be quite nuanced.
And, articles don't always translate directly from one language to another.
Right.
So for someone learning English, it could be like trying to solve a linguistic puzzle.
Great analogy.
Without all the pieces.
I think the key to mastering articles is understanding their function in a sentence.
Okay.
The sono is used to refer to a specific noun that is already known to the listener or the reader.
Okay.
While a and a are used to refer to a non-specific noun.
So it's about distinguishing between something specific and something general.
And paying attention to the sound of the word that follows the article.
Yeah.
A is used before words that begin with a consonant sound.
Right.
While an is used before words that begin with a vowel sound.
It's all about those subtle phonetic distinctions.
It is.
I think it's important to encourage non-native English speakers to immerse themselves in the language as much as possible.
Absolutely. Read books, watch movies, listen to music.
Yes.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
The more you expose yourself to the language, the more those patterns and nuances will start to make sense.
And, find a language partner or a tutor who can provide feedback and support.
That's a great idea.
Having someone to practice with and learn from can make a world of difference.
It's all about creating a supportive community.
It is.
Where language learning is seen as a journey, not a destination.
This whole discussion about non-native English speakers.
Yeah.
Makes me think about the future of the English language.
Oh, okay.
With English becoming increasingly globalized.
Right.
It's fascinating to consider how different cultural influences will continue to shape and reshape the language.
That's a thought-provoking point.
Yeah.
It's like English is becoming this melting pot of linguistic diversity.
It is.
Incorporating words and phrases from all corners of the world.
It makes you wonder, what will English sound like 100 years from now?
That is a great question.
Will we still be using the same grammar rules?
Right.
Will new slang terms have taken over?
Wow.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities.
It's like we're witnessing the birth of a new linguistic era.
And, you know, I think it's important to approach these changes with a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
Openness rather than resistance.
Okay.
Language is constantly evolving.
Right.
And that's what keeps it vibrant and alive.
And, you know, I think it's important to acknowledge that technology is playing a huge role in shaping the future of English.
Oh, absolutely.
With the rise of social media, texting, online communication.
Yeah.
We're seeing new words, abbreviations, even grammatical structures emerge.
It's a linguistic revolution.
It is.
Happening right before our eyes.
And it's fascinating to observe how technology is influencing the way we communicate.
It is.
Both for better and for worse.
Right.
It's like we're developing a whole new set of language skills. Specifically for the digital age.
It makes you wonder, are these changes enhancing our communication?
Yeah.
Or diminishing it?
Right.
Are we sacrificing clarity and nuance for speed and efficiency?
Those are questions worth pondering.
They are.
I think it's important to have these conversations about the evolving nature of language.
Yeah.
And how we can use technology in a way that enhances our communication rather than hindering it.
I couldn't agree more.
It's about being mindful
and
intentional with our language choices.
Absolutely.
Both online and offline.
Well said. You know, this whole discussion about the future of English has me feeling energized and excited about the possibilities.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that language is not static.
It's not.
It's dynamic.
It's a force.
Ever evolving.
Reflects our creativity, our ingenuity, and our interconnectedness as human beings.
Beautiful put, and I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree.
Wow, we're back. And, you know, after that last conversation, my mind is like buzzing about how technology is really transforming the way that we use language.
It is a fascinating time to be studying language.
It is.
Makes you wonder, are we like on the cusp of a whole new era of English?
I think so.
Yeah.
You know, and remember how we were talking about embracing those regional dialects?
Right.
Well, what if technology is actually breaking down those regional barriers?
Okay.
And creating like a more homogenized form of English.
That's an intriguing thought, with social media connecting people from all over the world.
Right.
Are we moving towards a global dialect?
Okay.
A sort of world English that blends elements from different varieties?
It's like those online gaming communities.
Oh, yeah.
Where players from different countries, they kind of develop their own unique lingo.
Right.
Borrowing words and phrases from each other. Could that be happening on a larger scale?
Yeah.
With English as a whole?
It's definitely a possibility. And, you know, it's interesting to think about the role of AI in all of this.
Oh, absolutely. AI is already influencing the way we write.
Right.
With grammar checkers, predictive text. Could AI eventually start dictating how we speak and write English?
That's a question that raises both excitement and a bit of apprehension.
Right.
On the one hand, AI could help us to communicate more effectively, bridging language barriers, making information more accessible. But on the other hand, it could also lead to a loss of individuality and creativity in our language use.
It's like that age-old debate about technology.
Yeah.
Is it a tool for liberation or a force for conformity?
Exactly. And I think the key is to approach AI with a critical eye, using it as a tool to enhance our communication, not to replace our own unique voices.
You know, this whole discussion about the future of English makes me think about something you said earlier. About language being a living organism that's constantly evolving.
It is.
And just like any living organism, it needs to adapt to survive.
That's a great analogy. And I think the beauty of language is that it is adaptable.
Right.
It's resilient.
It can withstand the pressures of globalization, technology, even political upheaval.
And sometimes I think we get so caught up in trying to preserve the purity of English that we forget to appreciate its dynamic nature.
It's like trying to keep a wild animal in a cage.
Exactly. Language needs to roam free, to explore, to evolve.
It does.
That's what keeps it vibrant and alive.
And, you know, I think it's also important to remember that language is a powerful tool.
It is.
It could be used to build bridges, to share ideas, to inspire and uplift.
Right.
But it can also be used to divide.
Yes.
To manipulate, to spread misinformation.
That's a powerful reminder.
It is.
It's up to us to use language responsibly, to choose our words carefully, and to be mindful of the impact our communication has on others.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of English, I want to leave you with a challenge.
Okay.
Pay attention to the language that you encounter in your daily life. Notice those subtle shifts, the emerging trends, the creative ways that people are using words. Don't take language for granted. Embrace its complexity.
Absolutely.
Embrace its beauty. Embrace its power.
Well said.
Language is a journey, not a destination.
It is.
So keep exploring. Keep learning. Most importantly, keep having fun with it.
I love that.
It's a perfect way to end this episode.
It is.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those words flowing.